First story. Due to a bowel blockage caused by adhesions suffocating the small intestine, I had spent many hours in the hospital emergency room in terrible pain and nausea. The surgeon promptly arranged emergency surgery after conducting multiple tests. Within the hour, I had made it to the surgery room. While I was under anesthesia for surgery, my spirit departed from my body and soared over the table. Medical professionals inspecting me were visible to me. Just a minute or two seems to be all that was required of this. A beautiful multicolored light suddenly engulfed me. It seemed like I was whizzing past this light at a breakneck pace. I was then transported to paradise. Although I had seen paradise in a prior NDE, this time I found myself standing beside the gorgeous golden wall of the city. The wall stood tall and sturdy, crafted entirely of pure gold. A flood of unconditional love and tranquility washed over me, filling every cell in my body. Standing there, a few feet from the city's entrance, was an absolute joy. I was speechless. I could make out the sounds of what seemed like a party or celebration just beyond the city gates. As the gentle, warm breeze caressed my skin, the air was perfumed with the delicate scent of wildflowers, adding a touch of sweetness to the otherwise clean and fresh air. Vibrant and deep hues were displayed. A gorgeous spring day came to me as I looked up at the sky, which was a deep blue. A lovely light, as brilliant as the sun itself, lit the sky, even though the sun itself was absent. Everything was bathed in a lovely golden light as the light shone down on it. By God's grace, I recognized the source of the light. As I stood beside the golden wall, I beheld a breathtaking, verdant meadow inhabited by wildflowers of every hue. Various shades of pink, purple, yellow, red, violet, and blue adorned the wildflowers. Their dispersion covered the vast expanse of the field before me, which extended from the garden where my last near-death experience had taken place all the way to the city where I now stood. Midway between the garden and the golden city, I beheld an ancient fieldstone wall adorned with pink roses that grew both up and over it. I stood against the lovely golden wall, my attention captivated by a small brown and white beagle puppy that wriggled at my feet. Leaning down to pet him, he let me rub his soft little puppy belly while wriggling and barking with excitement. I counted hundreds of people emerging from the beautiful garden and starting to make their way across the lush grass and wildflowers of the meadow as I continued to play with him and rub his belly. Angels were seen accompanying every individual I beheld. Luminous and towering above the earthlings in their pale blue and white robes were the celestial beings. People were laughing and chatting joyfully as they walked with their angels. No matter where I stood, I could overhear everyone talking. It was a diverse crowd, with men, women, and children of various ages and ethnicities represented. People started to pass me and start to enter the city as two men came into view. I knew the younger one from seeing pictures. His mom was a friend of mine, and I had seen those pictures. A number of years have gone since his death. I recognized the elder man as the father of this younger man. As the two men went past, I grinned and yelled out, "I know you." As they continued their way towards the majestic city's entrance, they both grinned at me. Time appeared to stand still throughout this parade, therefore I am not of how long it was. As I stood there, a sense of heavenly love seemed to permeate my entire being. I was informed that I needed to go back, that my turn hadn't come yet, and that I should tell the man's wife that he was okay, and that he was with his son. The nurse was standing at my side when I awoke, and I was still attached to multiple devices. Upon regaining enough strength to be transferred to my room later that day, I got a message from a different friend. On the same day that I was to have surgery, she told me, the widow whose son had passed away had also lost her husband. The two men I had seen that day standing at the golden wall were exactly those two, so I wasn't surprised. After sharing my story with my daughter, my doubts about the puppy began to fade. She began to tell me about their next-door neighbor, who they had to report to the authorities after witnessing him brutally murder a beagle puppy. I was totally surprised when she told me that. Therefore, I'm happy to report that our pets do really go to paradise, in case anyone had any doubts about that. I was able to ease my friend's grief by informing her that her son and husband were together, and she was elated. The second story. About half an hour after giving birth to my second kid, I felt severe abdominal agony. Not only was I lightheaded, but my bleeding was worse than I had anticipated. No need to freak out, I told myself. Because I was sure that my anxiety was the root cause of my vertigo, I practiced deep breathing exercises. In an effort to alleviate the discomfort, my midwife suggested that I use the restroom. I was helped on my way there by her and my spouse. Standing made me feel much worse as I held my newborn. Sitting down would help, I thought myself. That never happened. I couldn't urinate, and it hurt. My systolic blood pressure was relatively low at around 74 when the midwife took it. By that time, I had come to accept my symptoms as genuine. I had an immediate injection of oxytocin into my left thigh by her. I was in denial. My legs were paralyzed, my eyesight was fading, my hearing was getting worse, and my spouse kept asking me to breathe. It seems like I was breathing through a straw. I felt a sudden pull within, and I started to climb like an elevator, not long after that. I thought, oh no, here we go, as if I had a plan. I got out of the elevator and went to a window. The view via the window revealed 3 people seated at a table. They were my mother, her father, and God, in my eyes. Because I didn't believe in God until the figures were evident, I put God in quotations. I still don't understand how I came to see God in this light. I thought he was love itself. She appeared just like I remembered my grandma from when I was 8 years old, and she passed away. Even though he passed away long before I was born, I always assumed my grandpa was the one. It occurred to me that they were meeting. God is only a little bigger than my grandfather. It occurred to me. The purpose of this thought remains unclear to me. Sitting serenely, my grandma gave off the impression that everything was all right. My grandpa got to his feet and started to get very angrier. He looked to be giving God some advice about something crucial in his life. A serene smile graced God's face. I had no idea what they were talking about, and they ignored me. What followed is vaguely in my memory. Almost as if my mortal mind couldn't handle it, I am sure I don't recall every detail of what transpired. A feeling of empathy and compassion washed over me, and I distinctly remember telling myself, okay, I'll do that. Some sort of choice had been made here. Whether it has to do with getting back into my body or altering my life's trajectory is a mystery to me. I was back in the birthing unit room as soon as my mind and body were reunited after the decision was made. I was simply extremely ill. I was never officially dead. During my encounter, my midwife mentioned that my blood pressure was 60/30, which is probably when it happened, but I can't be sure. Throughout the remainder of the nightmare, I paid close attention to everything happening in the room. Even though I never felt that way, my midwife said that I seemed to be slipping in and out of consciousness. I felt fully aware the whole time, occasionally perceiving my surroundings and other times delving into my own thoughts. When she informed me about it a few days later, I was taken aback. I remained alert throughout. I informed her. No, you weren't, she firmly stated while producing a disapproving tone. At that very second, it hit me. I was self-aware, but she was unconscious. A corpse staring back at her. Seeing my grandparents was also a moment when I felt like I had passed some sort of boundary. It felt so effortless that I hadn't even considered it before. My whole understanding of consciousness changed during that discussion with my midwife. An overwhelming need to know more washed over me. How does one define consciousness? What on earth had I endured? Did it mirror what other individuals had to go through? How had I been impacted by this? Which possible destination did I reach? Why did this occur, and what did it signify? I think I drifted even farther away from my husband because of this, which turned into a minor fixation of mine. While he was babysitting the kids, I ignored him and did research on my phone or computer. A lot has transpired since then, and while I still don't have all the answers, I've grown to accept that. My post-experience path is detailed in yesterday's post. There was a day when I sat alone in my house and watched the world go by. It wasn't the shadows that scared me. It was the brightness of happiness. I never ever considered the possibility that it existed. However, I was startled awake by its presence. The unknown frightened me again. The outside air was shielded from the calming warmth of the night. A boundless expanse without borders or boundaries. The lightness was new and clean, unsettled and trembling my basis. The moment I realized I had no idea where to position my feet, I started to freak out. Whispers of encouragement were carried by the wind as they softly prodded me ahead, urging me not to turn back to my sanctuary. Breathing deeply and embracing the unknown, I pushed forward, expanding outward and upward. I got an uneasy sense that the light wouldn't be able to lead me back, even if I couldn't identify it. I couldn't fit because I was overweight. Down below, they anticipated clear forms, sharp edges, and dissimilarities. I had metamorphosed into an airy, limitless being. Do you see where I stand now? I didn't want to look for my lines since they had disappeared. There was important work to be done in the light, and my time was valuable. The gravitational pull of the light was drawing me farther and further from the shadows. Throughout my journey, the anguish of my past would ebb and flow, sometimes fading and then resurfacing. Nevertheless, it would never truly remain. Even though there were a handful of survivors, I was unfazed. If I wanted to go ahead, I had to accept them. I had no intention of ever letting go of anything. I embrace my task, regardless of its nature, without judgment or expectations when I'm in the light, since I know that I will grasp it all in due time. Even if you didn't realize it at the time, there will come a point in your life when you can look back and see how everything has contributed to your current position. Knowing that I can perform the math at a later time, I just take what is given to me.